I've traveled all around the world. I've been to Tahiti and Bora Bora and Santorini and Nantucket. Gardiners Island is as beautiful as any. I mean, there it is.
It's one family's property and has been since the time of, I think it was Charles II.
It's over 3,000 acres, 3,300 acres. One of the biggest privately held islands in the world.
There are animals on the island in numerous amounts, 40 or 50 different kinds of birds that shelter on the island or visit the island because there are no predators.
And the amazing part about this jewel of an island is that New York City, Times Square, Manhattan is just about 100 miles that way.
It's not been disturbed by house builders and developers. It's a pristine piece of land.
It's the exact same thing the Indians saw. It has been unspoiled. It's pristine.
There's no other place in the United States where you find anything like that. So it's magical. It enters my dreams at times.
It's always presented as a place that you don't go to.
They're very protective. I remember bringing up a boat to the western end of the cove up there, and we were diving off the boat and swimming, and we were met on the shore with a Jeep with armed drivers. They had rifles with them.
I was always under the impression that if you landed on the island, they would shoot you.
The allure of the island is you can't go there and what's on it. And what is on the island, and nobody really knows.
It's such a secret. And people love secrets.
Okay, well, here we are in the South End Cemetery. This is the oldest public cemetery in town. The oldest grave here probably is Lion Gardiner. The first time we encounter Lion Gardiner, he's in the 30 Years' War in the Netherlands. Meanwhile, in Saybrook, Connecticut, they're going to be building a fort because they're all afraid of the Pequots. So they entice Gardiner to come to Saybrook and promise him a fort with 200 men. Well, he gets there. There aren't 200 men. There are about 50. The fort's not even built. It's a mess. He stays there from 1636 to 1639. He's had enough. So he purchases an island from the sachem of the Shelter Island Indians. Now everyone's going, look how cheaply he got the island. He gave a couple of dogs, some coats, and maybe a gun. Boy, did he really fleece the Indians. No, the Indians called it Manachinoke, place where many have died. Either because of smallpox or wars, the Native Americans were not interested in keeping Manachinoke or Gardiners Island.
One of the big businesses on Gardiners Island in the 1820s and 30s was as a nursery for fruit trees and things that were then sold all over New England and the east end of Long Island, and certainly back as far as New York. The apple orchards were famous. The cider was the best hard cider. But once it was no longer fulfilling its role in farming, and it's more a place for gardeners to summer, which is fine, it's their island, it meant that it no longer was really part of East Hampton.
If you're going to do something on Gardiners Island, you better have me because I'm the walking encyclopedia and the biggest historian that's living on it.
Robert David Lion Gardiner.
Robert Gardiner.
Robert David Lion Gardiner.
Robert David Lyon, or if I've got that in the right order, was the big showman. He was the face of Gardiners Island to the press and the public. He was the 16th Lord of the Manor.
He did accept the mantle of the Lord of the Manor.
When you call yourself the Lord of the Manor and you have a special place in East End society here, people know the name.
You know, it was just very fascinating to meet a person like him.
White egrets. My grandmother made a sensation going to the opening of the Metropolitan Opera in the 1880s. In her hair, a white egret feather. They said, but Mrs. Gardiner's were not from Paris. They were homegrown from Gardiners Island. Isn't that lovely? Horny.
Robert David Lyon Gardiner, because he'd started a nonprofit, was required to have at least 2 weeks of educational programming on the island. A beautiful boat ride out to the pier at Gardiners Island. You can see the white painted windmill, and we had sandwiches, walked up to the house. Every object in his house told a story of how fabulous the Gardiner family was. Every plate that was vermeil was really solid gold. Every famous figure of 200 years ago, he would be able to quickly tell you about which cousin, which uncle knew that person, and how if it weren't for that uncle, that person would not be a very important person.
We were always making good marriages, either for money or for political roots.
And then you would get in 2 trucks.
And he gave us his story of the island for about 2 hours. And then we came back, had more sandwiches toasted with champagne, and then we left. He was extremely gregarious. He was way larger than life. If he had been an actor, and many people feel that that really was what he wanted, to become an actor and not a lawyer, but law was what virtually every male Gardiner was supposed to be proficient in, he would have been typecast for a Midsummer's Murder or Agatha Christie.
His wife, we never saw his wife.
He was obviously gay.
The king that gave us the island. You see, he was the best looking king they ever had in England.
He was total entertainment. If he had been an artist in the 1960s and 70s, he would have been doing happenings all over the country.
The basis of the Gardiner family power and wealth was the land. It was before factories had been built in America. There were no Ford factories, no Campbell's soup, no Post Toasty.
He was a conduit for the legend and lores of the island.
We are the first English family in the state of New York.
A tree like this was here when Lyon Gardiner purchased the island from the native Indians.
And here is the signature of the great Chief Wyandotte, Lyon Gardiner's friend and blood brother. They cut their veins and put them together.
So many of his stories were hyperbolic, is that the word? Yeah.
He was such a great storyteller. He wasn't so interested in the facts. He was interested in the mesmerizing story of how his ancestors were probably some of the greatest Americans. His whole life was built on a matrix of the importance of the Gardiner family. We're talking about, 1638. So we've got a lot of time to embroider, a lot of time to put extra frosting on the cake. And by this time, you don't have much cake, you mostly have frosting.
A male heir always inherited the island. But in 1937, the island was in danger of being foreclosed. Sarah Diodati Gardiner bought the island. And then when she died in 1953, her niece, Alexandra Creel Gillette, and Robert David Lyon Gardiner both inherited the island.
It enraged him to have to share this island that he'd always portrayed as his thing. The Gillettes, they're equal owners in this treasure. It drove him crazy.
they had to split the cost of the island. So the Goulettes would pay some and he would pay some. Well, he stopped paying, so he wasn't allowed on the island. But then he got a court order allowing him to go on the island, even though he wasn't paying his fair share, but he was taking people on the island and telling them all about it. And the Goulettes were footing the bill.
I tried to get onto the island. I had it all set up, and Mr. Gardiner died. Robert Gardiner died. Robert Lyon Gardiner. He died. And then that was it.
So when he died, buildings had not really been taken care of very much. So that's when I think the Goulettes realized that there was so much work to be done there that we just stop.
I mean, we're all fascinated, right, to take a peek and all the history there. But, you know, they don't want to share.
In the perfect world, they'd continue the restoration, then they'd let nonprofits and things every once in a while be able to tour the island, and I'd be happy as a clam.
They can pass away, their children can pass away, the island still could be sold. Oh, that's the biggest. And you know, out here, money is nothing when it comes to real estate.
We don't want the island to pass into development. I mean, another option would be a national park.
The all-time worst would be making it a public park, okay? So then people can go on there and litter and use the porta potties, and that would just ruin the island. The island is the way it is because we're not allowed on it. That's amazing.
I have one more question. Why did you decide to dedicate your life to preserving history and teaching?
Well, my father was a plumber, okay? And my father was a plumber before they were called Mister. So his job was very difficult, and he didn't make $125 an hour that a plumber makes today. So he gave me a choice. He said, you can go to school. So I went to Oneonta State Teachers College because there was no tuition. I really didn't like history at all until I got to college. And I took a course, and this man, Pawa, his name was, I'll never forget him. He told us all the things about the United States that you didn't get in the textbooks. For example, the whole fiasco with the Panama Canal and how that was ripped apart from the country of Panama. Or the Spanish-American War, all right? The real story behind the Spanish-American War. And that made me wonder, well, what about East Hampton history that we don't know? Because it was written by white men for a while. There was no Native Americans writing the history. There were certainly no African Americans writing the history. And there were no women. Made me think, you know, maybe there are stories out here that haven't been told yet. And then being a teacher, it was another way to teach people about this place. So maybe we'll start preserving some of this, because the worst name in the entire language out here is the Hamptons. We are not the Hamptons, the upscale, fashionable, trendy, and unaffordable place. We're Southampton, which is different from Watermill, which is different from Sag Harbor, which is different from East Hampton Village, which is different from Amagansett and Montauk and Springs. We all have our own identity, our own historical buildings. We're not that big melting pot. So the more we know about these places, I think the more we can save them and get away from that idea of the Hamptons. So now I'm really glad I studied history, just because I can rail about that, you know.